now welcome, ladies and gentlemen, the treasurer of the American Society for Yad Vashem. Please welcome Mr. David Halperin.
Good evening. As you might have heard tonight, at the end of World War II, the Supreme Commander of the Allied forces in Europe, General Dwight David Eisenhower, made a decision to personally visit as many concentration camps as he could. Anticipating a time when the Nazis would try to deny their atrocities, General Eisenhower ordered his liberation forces to film and document the appalling conditions that existed in the camps. In 1945, after liberating the first death camp in Germany, General Eisenhower wrote, "I felt it my duty to be in a position to testify firsthand about these things, in case there ever arose a time at home in America, the belief or assumption that the stories of Nazi brutality were just propaganda." Ladies and gentlemen, we are honored to have with us tonight Mary Jean Eisenhower. She is the granddaughter of that great general and president. Mary was introduced to the American Society for Yad Vashem by my dear friend Bob Book. Bob invited Mary to attend the Yad Vashem Gala in Los Angeles back in June, and her presence made it a tremendous success. So not being shy, we asked her again, and therefore we are doubly honored to have Mary with us in New York tonight. Mary has dedicated her life to public service and supporting those in need. As Chairman Emeritus of the People to People International, an organization founded in 1956 by her grandfather, Mary carries on her grandfather's dream to enhance international understanding and friendship among peoples of different countries and diverse cultures. I can truly say that Mary makes the human race more human. Mary, I am son of Holocaust survivors, and you are the granddaughter of a great liberator.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, that generation is almost gone. More than 90% are no longer with us. Soon there will be a day when there will be no one who can say, "I was there, I saw with my own eyes, and I can testify." The cause of Holocaust remembrance is very daunting,
Yes.
but having you with us strengthens our resolve to continue. Thank you for being here. Ladies and gentlemen, Mary Jean Eisenhower.
Obviously, I feel terribly honored to be here, so much so that I didn't even let him finish the introduction before I was running up to the podium, so I apologize for that, and thank you for the lovely introduction. Interestingly, while the remarks were going on, I heard a story about Martin Greenfield. Well, I have one of my own. Would he raise his hand or stand or something so that I can see him? Yes. I wanted to meet him, and maybe nice to meet you. Maybe this is the only way we're going to do it. But he also made clothes for my grandfather. And I was told that he actually put notes inside of the clothes before he delivered them. So, Mr. Greenfield, I'd really like to thank you for the great relations we have with Taiwan. It's very hard to follow such wonderful, wonderful sentiments tonight and such great stories. And I honestly think that, particularly in the case of Wolf Blitzer, that he should say that we are professionals. Please don't try this at home. And I think that could be said of the rabbi as well. So thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of this evening and listening. Before I start, with what I have to say, there is a clip of Granddad, I believe it was referred to earlier, that we'd like to show you. There aren't very many words that can describe that moment, but I will be sharing with you what he was saying to those people in just a moment. Obviously, for many reasons, it's an honor to be here this evening, celebrating the end of the Holocaust, but especially celebrating Yad Vashem, a most worthy and critical instrument in healing, advancing, and learning from the tragedies of the past. It's especially imperative to do in this day of historic revision, as more and more tragedies of the past fade. It's important that we keep the memories alive for our future generations. It's equally imperative to do this now, as we've seen, and it's been mentioned earlier, the tragedy and the horror that took place in France. Unfortunately, evil doesn't know any particular group of people. Evil is everybody's problem. I think what is most disturbing to me in modern times is how the story of the Holocaust and what everybody went through, clips like that, they used to show them in history class, believe it or not. But now it's just fading and dissipating. And as that generation passes on, of course, so does the memory. This type of deceitful denial only begs history to repeat itself, which sadly in some places it has, besides France. And I applaud Yad Vashem for the emotional sacrifice it must take to be sure the facts and personalization of this time moves forwards as the souls that, excuse me, the souls of the past protect the souls of the future from the same unbearable fate. Growing up in Gettysburg on the edge of my grandparents' farm, we were together almost every day, and definitely for Sunday dinners. I remember in the collection of photograph albums of my grandfather's, there were several that were pictures my father, serving as his aide, took when they opened the concentration camps. The albums were kept closed, but they were openly available for anyone to look at, and Granddad did not worry about sheltering the young people. I was very young at the time, the first time I saw them, and he didn't worry about that. In fact, he encouraged it because he said that it was our responsibility to witness. It was everyone's responsibility to witness. He was afraid that it would dissipate into the past, and he knew it was so ghastly that without the evidence, people wouldn't believe it was possible. I think his own words describe it best, as they were written immediately after he discovered the depths of what was going on. On April 15, 1945, Eisenhower writes to General George C. Marshall, "But the most interesting, although horrible, sight that I encountered during the trip was a visit to a German internment camp near Gotha. The things I saw beggar description. While I was touring the camp, I encountered 3 men who had been inmates, and one, by ruse or another, had made their escape. I interviewed them through an interpreter. The visual evidence and the verbal testimony of starvation, cruelty, and bestiality were so overpowering as to leave me a bit sick. In one room, where there were piled up 20 or 30 naked men killed by starvation, George Patton would not even enter. He said he would get sick if he did so, but I made the visit deliberately in order to be in a position to give firsthand evidence of these things if ever in the future there develops a tendency to charge these allegations merely to propaganda." And on April 19th, 1945, in a cable to General Marshall, he writes, "We continue to uncover German concentration camps for political prisoners in which conditions of undescribable horror prevail. I have visited one of these myself, and I assure you that whatever has been printed on them to date has been an understatement. If you would see any advantage about asking about a dozen leaders of Congress and a dozen prominent editors to make a short visit to this theater in a couple of C-54s, I will arrange to have them conducted to one of these places where the evidence of bestiality and cruelty is so overpowering as to leave no doubt to their minds about the normal practices of the Nazis in these camps. And finally, in a press conference on June 18, 1945, he states, "When I found the first camp like that, I think I was never so angry in my life. The bestiality displayed there was not merely piled up bodies of people that had starved to death, but to follow out to the road to see where they tried to evacuate them so that they could still work. You could see where they sprawled on the road. You could go to their burial pits and see horrors that really even I wouldn't begin to describe. I think people ought to know about such things. It explains something of my attitude towards the Nazi war criminal. I believe he must be punished, and I will hold out for that forever." I don't believe that my grandfather was ever the same after witnessing what he did, and I know he was emphatic that the world understand what happened. It's imperative that we have a full understanding and pass it along, not to dwell, but to feel utter compassion, to teach, to witness, to warn our next generations. This is the only way we have to honor the millions of victims. Anything less than they suffered and perished in vain. Again, my deepest admiration for Yad Vashem, for the heritage of courage, compassion, and righteousness it houses. In closing, I'd like to share with you my grandfather's farewell, the last paragraph, not the whole address, I promise. The last paragraph of my grandfather's farewell address from January 17th, 1960. It's the same address where he talks about the great military-industrial complex, but this is the last paragraph of that speech. And I repeat it any time I possibly can because I believe it embroils his vision for what we all strive for. It goes, "We pray the peoples of all faiths, all races, all nations may have their great human needs satisfied, that those now denied opportunity shall come to enjoy it to the full, that all who yearn for freedom may experience its spiritual blessings, that those who have freedom will understand also that its heavy responsibilities, that all who are insensitive to the needs of others shall learn charity, that the scourges of poverty, disease, and ignorance will be made to disappear from the earth, and that in the goodness of time, all peoples will come to live together in a peace guaranteed by the binding force of mutual respect and love." Thank you with all my heart for inviting me to be a part of your lives this evening. It is a pure and true honor, pleasure to be with you.